So today we're going to be taking this icon right here and we're going to be redesigning it into this. Pure awesomeness with a lot of glowy effects, and I just love the way this came out. So if you want to see how I made this, stick around. I'm going to be going through the whole process, how I did it, kind of what my thinking was, and maybe you can even follow along like some sort of tutorial if you want to. I started my project by first of all dragging in a reference image into my scene here. I then added in a plane. I just rotated it 90 degrees in X, scaled it up in edit mode. Then I just tabbed out of edit mode. I actually grabbed my reference image and just brought it down to kind of match it up with the plane. I then went into edit mode. I just added in a loop cut, just slided it along to the edge of the triangle here. Then I just selected a vertex, extruded it down, and then I just selected the three vertexes, filled it in with F. And then after that, I simply just selected the three vertices at the corners, Control Shift B, and I just beveled those out like this. So it's at this point where I extrude the face out, and then I hit I. I'm doing a little bit of an inset, so I don't want it to look too flat. Then I'm just extruding that new face in, and then I decided to do one little inset again and an extrude inside, just to give it this little bit of a lip in the inside, a little bit of a bevel. And later on I'm going to add a emissive material to that as well. So now to clean things up, I'm adding a bevel modifier on top of that. And you can see here I'm just messing around with the limit over here and the angle. Just also looking in wireframe to make sure I can see the size of the bevel. So not going too crazy there, just a slight bevel, adjusting things as I go, and also I smoothed things out. So now I'm just having a look at it, trying to plan out what else I should do. So I'm going to keep this one pretty basic. So it's at this point where I'm going to get into making the rest of the logo. But to make things easier, I'm creating a new collection and just adding this back plate to that new collection. That gives me a fresh scene to kind of start with this guy over here. So you can see I'm adding in a plane, and to save time I'm obviously adding in a mirror modifier, enabling the clipping, and I'm working on the x-axis here. So I'm starting by selecting these vertices here, and I'm bringing them up closer to the top here, just these two here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one and just extrude to the right. So I'm trying to keep the spacing even, and as I'm making a little bit here at the top, I'm trying to make the spacing kind of line up with the placement of the vertices in the bottom. So later on I can kind of evenly bridge them. So you can see here I'm just selecting edges, and I'm going using the bridge tool here just to bridge these edges, and I'm also working in and out of wireframe. So you can see here I'm selecting these faces here, I'm extruding them down. And this is just a matter of pulling or extruding vertices around in the front orthographic view, and also just thinking about topology here. So you can see I'm keeping the spaces relatively the same, and I'm just working my way around the border. Now whenever you're doing this, try and keep things as consistent as possible, because obviously you want to be able to have like a good edge flow here. So it doesn't help if you add too many edges at the top, and at the bottom you add too little, and then you try and kind of bridge things and it doesn't line up. So you can see here I kind of have the same amount of faces here, so it's very easily able to just bridge those. So now I'm just rolling in some subdivisions here, some cuts, and I'm just trying to bridge up these edges here with the edges on the side here. So I'm trying different methods. So here I just filled all of these, and I just used the cut tool to fill those in. I'm also just sliding vertices around where I feel they're a little bit too congested. So I can see here not quite enough, so I'm filling that in, pulling this point down. So this is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you can see what I'm doing here, just working my way down, trying to bridge edge loops here. So I'm bridging these guys, just selecting them, and I'm trying to select them in fours and bridge them. I'm trying to avoid non-quads here, so anything with more than 4 vertices I'm trying to avoid, and anything with less than 4 as well. So you can see here I'm using the fill tool here in this little section here, trying to just mess around with the spin and the rotation till I get something that roughly looks good, and where it isn't quite right I'm just using the merge tool to merge points together again. So you can see here it wasn't too hard to make this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the eyes, and how I'm doing that is I'm going to wireframe, just selecting a vertex roughly over where the eye is on the reference. I'm then extruding the faces and just scaling them down. And you can see it's square, but I'm going to disable proportion editing and just round that out. So I'm rounding those out and scaling them up roughly in place, and then just deleting those faces. Now you can see here the spacing between the vertices here are not quite right. I tried smoothing them out, didn't really do anything. So what I did is I just manually kind of pulled points around. So you can see here I'm grabbing the vertices and just roughly trying to correct the spacing here, trying to make everything look square and correct. So now I'm extruding the edge one more time, just kind of to create this loop around the eye. I am trying to use the smooth tool in conjunction with just manually pulling things around, and I kind of got a result that I liked. So now I am adding a subdivision surface modifier and just smoothing things out. So now I'm adding also a new layer to add this guy to, and I'm just also placing it in front of the back plate here, and I'm going to now add on some more subdivisions here by bumping up the levels. And now I'm going back into edit mode, and I'm going to just see what I can kind of customize a little bit here. So I don't want things to be exactly the same as the reference image here, so I decided to scale up the eyes a little bit bigger, and also just stylize some of the features around the face. So you can see here, I'm going to do the bottom, just grabbing the tentacles here, kind of rounding things out. I'm trying to go for a more of a cute kind of look, not quite as sharp, and this looks really cute and cuddly. So I'm just looking at some different ideas, thinking about things. You can see here I'm trying to make it look a little bit more puffy, a little bit more just cute and adorable. So once I was happy with that, I kind of just selected all the faces, extruded them out to add some thickness. I had some weird stuff going on here with the normals, so I just corrected the normals, and then everything was looking okay. So to tighten things up, I just simply added in a cut, just slide it up the new edge, and I did the same thing at the back, just to kind of make it look still nice and subdivided, but at the same time tighter as well, so not completely rounded out. So now I had this logo part of the design done. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to add in my camera to the scene. So I'm adding in just a basic camera here, and I'm positioning it in the front of my scene here, and I'm also going to go to my output settings, and I'm changing the aspect ratio here, but just making both the Y and X coordinates 1920. So I'm also going to my focal length and changing that to 125 millimeters. This is what I prefer to work with, and just moving the camera back. And this is just kind of like the easy part. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in some lights, because obviously we want to be able to see here. So I'm just adding in a basic lamp here, or an area light. And I'm just scaling it up, primarily making it a little bit higher, and I'm going here and I'm making the power about 130, and I'm also going into my render settings and just enabling things like my ambient occlusion and the screen space reflection. So you can see here the light isn't quite enough, so I'm duplicating this light in the front view and making one on both sides. I decided 130 wasn't enough on the power, so I bumped it up to 230, which was a lot better. So here I'm just rotating the lights in the top orthographic view. I think they need to come forward a bit. So it's kind of looking a lot better here, but I still don't have quite enough light. So I'm adding in another area light at the front, and I'm going to scale this one up, and I'm also going to increase the power to about 250. And now you can see this is quite well lit. I'm just kind of repositioning it, and this is kind of one of those things where it's also important to enable transparency if you go to the film, because you might want to use this as an actual kind of desktop icon. So now I'm going into my shading workspace, and I'm selecting the logo here to start with, and I'm going to just kind of figure out what to go with here. So I wanted the actual original color here, so I'm getting my reference image using the eyedropper and just kind of getting the default color, which is white in this case, or a little bit of an off-white, which is kind of dumb because I could have just left it as it is. But anyway, I'm just trying to be consistent here. So now I'm creating a second material for the back plate, and I'm just kind of using the eyedropper to get the exact same base color. Now I don't want things to look just exactly the same as the original logo, which would kind of defeat the point. So I am going to come in here now, and I'm going to add in some interesting nodes, try out some different textures. So you can see one of the things I did, I'm adding two different texture or materials to the back plate. So you can see I first started by trying to make the back part here a kind of bit of a darker shade of the original color. And then to make things interesting, I also added in an emissive material to the rim of the bevel and the inside here. So just assigning an emissive material here. Then I'm going into my render view, and I'm just kind of trying different colors and different powers and strength settings with the light here. Also enabled the glow in my render settings for Eevee, and that really created this really cool neon effect. So at the moment I thought things might be okay, but it still looked a little bit too like the original one. So this is where I started adding in some notes. I started thinking about textures. So I tried with a Voronite texture at first, and it didn't look quite right. It looked a bit too soft, so I added in a mix shader and added in two different colors that I wanted to mix. But to sharpen things up, I decided to drop in a color ramp. So I'm moving up my notes here, searching for a color ramp, and placing it in there. Now if I grab these two value sliders and kind of pull them closer to each other, it's really going to sharpen up that, and I can now use this as a proper mask, mixing these two different colors here. But that looked a little bit too straight, so I decided to mix in some more texture notes here. I tried plugging in some of the different ones into the Verona here. This one kind of looked okay, but still not quite what I wanted to go for. So I added in another texture node here, which was a noise. So the noise was going into a wave texture, and that was going into a Verona texture. So this started to look really interesting. Started to use that for the mix between these two colors, and that just looked a lot better. So now I'm just messing around with the metallic slider here and the roughness, just seeing what works, what doesn't. I'm not really too scientific or specific when it comes to nodes or shaders. So now that I've got that established, I'm going to start working with the material here for the actual little logo on the backplate here. So what I'm doing is just copying over these nodes, and I'm going to take a similar approach here. So I'm just pasting them in for this material here for the icon, and all I'm going to do is simply change the colors here and the values of the colors in the mix RGB. And I'm still just trying to keep a slight bit of a pattern here. I don't want it to just be one solid color. So I was experimenting around with like different shades of white, a little bit of off-white, like with a little bit of gray in it. And then I was also messing around with the scales on the textures here. So this kind of approach of just copying nodes over can save you a lot of time. And it kind of just also makes it match the background better. So that was definitely a good choice. I kind of thought this really worked well. So now what I'm doing is I'm adding in an edge loop here, just beveling it, and I'm applying that same emissive material here, just to kind of give it like this glow on the edge, this neon glow, and I thought that really looked cool. So at the front I noticed I can't really see it, so what I did is I ended up trying to rotate the actual logo itself, and I realized that kind of perspective shift wasn't really going to work. So I actually went into edit mode and I just kind of expanded that edge out along the normal, so trying to kind of just make it a little bit more pop out in the front view here. And with that sort of focal length, it was kind of a little bit hard, but it ended up working, and it kind of made the actual logo itself look a little bit more rounded out. So here I'm doing my first test render, and I was really kind of blown away with the results. I thought it looked really cool and really unique. So this is a fun little project, and you can see here I'm just kind of looking back at my work, kind of going. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and maybe this inspires you to try and make a logo redesign of some sort. And this has been the Discord logo. I might try a few more of these if people like this sort of thing. Sometimes I prefer to do the tutorials because I don't have to kind of narrate over it, which is a little bit easier. But if you've enjoyed this, definitely give it a like and maybe subscribe to my channel. And if this sort of thing isn't for you, I actually do whole courses on character modeling and animating and all sorts of things on my channel that might be more suited for what you're looking for. So go ahead, check that out, and I'll see you guys next time for another video. So you can see here in the time lapse, I'm just, after I was done with that, I kind of just still experimented around with some of the lighting, and that's just kind of one of those things with 3D. You're never really quite done. You can always experiment a little bit, try different settings. So anyway, I've said enough. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you guys next time.